close your eyes and remember something. Remember when your father came home from the factory, tired but smiling, because his paycheck that week meant something. When your mother could clip coupons, walk into the grocery store, and fill a cart without breaking into a sweat. When saving for a house didn't mean 3 decades of debt, it meant 3 years of discipline. There was a time in America when the math simply worked. When a single income could buy a home, raise a family, and still have enough left over for a tank of gas and a Saturday night at the movies. When the American dream wasn't a punchline, it was a promise kept. The 1960s weren't perfect, but they were balanced. And somewhere between then and now, that balance shattered. Today, we're going back. Not to romanticize or oversimplify, but to understand what we lost and maybe, just maybe, figure out what wrong. This is the story of an economy that worked for ordinary people. Let's see if we can remember how it felt. In 1960, the median family income in the United States was around $5,600 a year. If you hear that number today, it sounds laughable, almost impossible to live on. But here's the thing, that $5,600 had real power. The strength of the dollar during that period far exceeded its current value. In 1960, median income increased by 4% compared to 1959. Consumer prices rose slightly during the same period, but the actual increase in real purchasing power for American families still reached about 2%. That meant something profound. Workers were getting ahead, not just keeping up. This steady growth ensured that working and middle-class families maintained their standard of living and gained more affordability year by year. For the first time since 1941, economic surveys included both urban non-farm households and rural agricultural households, providing a comprehensive picture of American spending habits. A factory worker could earn about $130 a week. The minimum wage was only $1 an hour in 1960, but the average family income was sufficient to keep them from worrying about daily expenses or large purchases. More importantly, the median family income continued to rise, reaching approximately $6,900 by 1965. This wasn't just economic growth, it was economic fairness. The gains from productivity were shared. When companies made more money, workers made more money. That's the part we forget. Growth meant something to ordinary people back then. This income was the foundation for what came next, buying a home. The American dream in the 1960s wasn't a slogan. It was a mathematical reality. The golden key to homeownership lay in the house price-to-income ratio, and that ratio was healthy. Just 2.6 years of household income was enough to purchase the median-priced house. Let that sink in. 2.5 years of saving, not 30 years of debt. In 1960, the median value of a home in the U.S. was approximately $11,900, compared to the median family income of $5,600. This was at or near the 2.6 level considered ideal. Even when median income rose to $6,900 in 1965, the average price of a new home was $20,000, keeping the ratio very close to the healthy threshold. This meant that a young couple, both partners working, or even just one stable income earner, could realistically save up to buy a house in less than 3 years. New home buyers in the 1950s and 1960s were predominantly first-time buyers in their 20s, often relying on only one source of income in the family. Think about that. One income, mid-20s, homeowner. This ease of homeownership was the foundation of middle-class wealth and stability. When a major asset like housing was within reach, households could build assets, accumulate equity, and pass that wealth on to the next generation. This contrast shows that the American dream didn't die because of the price of coffee or postage stamps. It died because of the imbalance in the largest expenditures of life. Today, as the national median home price skyrockets, while median household income has only increased by 29%, the door to homeownership has virtually slammed shut for many. The memory of the 2.6-year income ratio has become an economic legend. Recall the smell of gasoline, the sound of the pump clicking, the feeling of filling up the tank without checking your bank account first. In 1960 and 1961, the average price of a gallon of gas was only about 31 cents. This price remained stable, with an average of 30 cents per gallon in 1964. This low price made gasoline an easily affordable consumer item, turning driving into a worry-free activity. The biggest difference between 1965 coffee and modern coffee isn't an inflation adjustment, but its position within the consumer budget. The cheap price of coffee in the 60s symbolized the ease of daily spending. Whether you were an office worker, a grocery shopping housewife, or a factory worker, buying a hot cup of coffee or a pack to take home was within reach without much financial thought. This created a context where essential consumer goods and small daily amenities maintained very manageable prices. When food costs were generally low, items like coffee were also under control. This ease of affordability for small items, like coffee and gas, is precisely what created the sense of economic optimism for Americans. They could enjoy small comforts without affecting their ability to save for large expenditures. Imagine a world where staying connected didn't require email, instant messaging, or mobile phones. A world of handwritten letters. Families frequently corresponded, updating news, sending congratulations, or resolving financial matters. While today, communication costs have shifted to internet services, mobile phones, and monthly subscriptions, these costs have become much more complex and expensive. The 5-cent stamp represents an era when the most basic essential government services were provided at a symbolic price, without burdening citizens. Going back to the factory worker who earned about $130 a week, this worker could buy a new Chevrolet Chevelle, a popular muscle car at the time, and pay installments of about $98 per month. This installment amount, accounting for less than 25% of monthly income, was an entirely feasible ratio. This confirms that at the time, the automobile was a practical, accessible tool, not a huge debt burden. This affordability was also evidenced by purchasing habits. In 1960, 47% of car buyers paid entirely in cash. People could easily accumulate cash to purchase a large asset without relying on complex loans. Cars were also marketed to the youth. The 1964 Ford Mustang was targeted at young adults and teenagers. This simplicity meant low production costs. However, for buyers, the car was the key to entering middle-class life, and affordability was the most important factor. The market still offered cheap entry-level options, a rarity for major goods today. While color TV was an expensive luxury in the 60s, a 21-inch color TV self-assembly kit was worth the equivalent of over $4,000 today. Other forms of mass entertainment were extremely affordable. This is massive and relentless growth, reflecting a fundamental shift in national spending. In the 60s, although the total cost was still low compared to the present, it was already a concerning area due to its rapid growth rate. But also the profound change in who actually pays for the system. Every illness was a genuine financial risk. A fall, a surgery, or a prolonged illness could send a middle-class family into turmoil because they had to directly pay most of their medical bills. But then government programs began to emerge, gradually expanding and intervening more strongly in the healthcare sector. Many seniors, middle-income individuals, and vulnerable people suddenly gained an important layer of protection. A single income could support a family because costs were tethered to reality. We can't go back. And maybe we shouldn't want to, but we can remember. We can tell the story. We can look our children and grandchildren in the eye and say, it wasn't always like this. There was a time when America worked for ordinary people. And maybe, just maybe, if we remember it clearly enough, we can start asking the right questions about why it stopped. Thank you for taking this journey with us. If this stirred something in you, a memory, a sense of loss, or maybe even a spark of hope, please share it. The stories of how things used to work are too important to forget. Until next time, may we all remember what's possible when the math adds up and the system works for everyone. This was when America worked. Let's not forget it.